A brand new week and more games to discuss. Arsenal take on Bayer Leverkusen on Wednesday, Lyon on Sunday, before one more week before the Premier League returns. We've got transfer news to discuss, both ins and outs, and some familiar faces back at the Shubber Realty Training Centre in today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines. I hope you're doing good and I hope you're doing well. I really genuinely hope that you are doing good and well. I tweeted this morning that it just continues to be scarier and scarier every time I wake up and just scroll through my social media page, not because of any football related news. There are far more important things in this world going on than transfers, believe me. But yeah, it's a really scary and sad time here in the UK right now. And when I say, and I end these shows always by saying, stay safe and stay respectful, and perhaps more than ever, those two words are more important. So please, if you are indeed in any of the areas in which there are significant levels of unrest, I do wish you and your family and loved ones and ones of yours that are perhaps in those areas all the best, and I hope that you are staying as safe as you can. Scary times, but good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Thank you. Matt G, Josh, Jose, Amira, Carlton, Vivian, Martin, Louis, Edison, Franklin, Jean, Paul, Steve, Kaiser, James, Martin. We've got Olawale, Wayne, Freddie, Lee, Adagoke, Rich, Kevin, Sergio, Morgie, Stephen, Granddaddy Gooner, Paul, Stevie, Dylan, Rob, Kevin, Angela, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you. Really appreciate your time and hope that you're doing genuinely good and well, and that you're staying safe too. Let's jump straight into today's stories. I've got another. I've started the show quite heavily today. I've got another story to talk about that's not related to that, but related to something separate that also I want to talk kind of brashly and bluntly about, which I know that you enjoy my unfiltered view on certain things. So we're going to do that. And we're going to start, though, with a congratulations to Nicolas Pepe, who signed for Villarreal. Hopefully this is a move that really gets his career back on track. This is definitely a big step forward for Pepe. Of course, he spent last season at Trabzonspor, didn't see that situation renewed, and to get a move to a very good side in Spain is really good for Pepe. I've had my reservations, my criticisms of Pepe for sure during his time at Arsenal. And I do hope that what we see is a successful season for Pepe, and one that, of course, does end in him perhaps regaining some confidence that certainly was lost during his time at Arsenal and Turkey as well. Moving those specifically to Arsenal, and I'll be very honest with you, it was Sunday yesterday, so not loads happened, but what we did see was the return of some of Arsenal's greatest talents. Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, and Aaron Ramsdale all back at the Shubber Realty Training Centre, which was, of course, fantastic to see. The likelihood that these players will be involved in matches on Wednesday, of course, against Leverkusen, there's a good chance they'll probably be in the squad. They may come off the bench. They might get some minutes. We know that Havertz and Martinelli and Gabriel, of course, after just returning to training with the team ahead of the game against Man United, came off the bench and played some minutes too. So there's a chance that if you're going to the game on Wednesday that you will see these players. But what I will say is interesting is that Arsenal released a number of images of Arsenal's training session yesterday. Now, I've had a really close scroll through as many of that have been available, of course. And also, if you head over to kind of Getty, obviously, where if you're ever part of kind of the media, that's where a lot of us use and get our images from, for those that have got the images available and have got an agreement with Getty to use them. You can scroll through, even if you don't have that agreement to fair, you can scroll through the options and the potential pictures that are available. And I've scrolled through as many of them as I can, looking for two players in particular, and I'm struggling. Maybe it's my eyesight. Maybe some people have spotted them and I haven't. But I cannot, in any of these images, see Jurriën Timber And I cannot see Ricardo Calafiori either. I cannot see either of the two players in any of the images so far. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing them, but I haven't seen them. So that's a worry. And I don't know, because obviously we saw Timber missed the last game against Liverpool. It was suggested that it was for rest reasons and that he played quite a lot. Maybe he's been given some extra time off. I don't want to rush to conclusions about anything, but obviously it's a frustration to see what's going on, and I really look forward to, hopefully anyway, to seeing them back if they are going to be back very soon. And also, what we'll see is the game on Wednesday will provide us an insight into who is and who isn't available, and hopefully Mikel Arteta's press conference as well will give us that too. Kieran Tierney has been speaking as well, and been speaking very complimentary. Actually, I think maybe this interview was a little bit older, but it's resurfaced because Tierney has been speaking about Arsenal's transfer target, Mikel Merino. We'll talk more specifically about Merino soon. But Tierney said previously, you have world-class players like Martin Zubimendi, Mikel Merino, and Brais Mendes. And it's not that people don't think they're good. It's just that if you're only watching the Premier League every week, it's hard to know. They are world class. I mean, really strong words there from Kieran Tierney, speaking specifically about a player that is heavily linked with the move to Arsenal, as we know. And we'll talk about his situation in just a second. But Kieran Tierney there, I think, giving a bit of an insight and a bit of a reality check to a lot of people about La Liga and the talent that's there. He plays with these guys. He's played with, of course, players at Arsenal. He knows what world-class talent is. Very complimentary of those players, and Merino, of course, in particular. The headline story, as I mentioned, not loads to talk about today. The headline story surrounds Mikel Merino, who has been subject to differences in reporting. And, you know, on Saturday, I reported a few stories, actually. I managed to break the story of Emile Smith-Rowe's sell-on clause being more than 10%, and provided some extra information around the Eddie Nketiah deal, and, of course, the situation on Mikel Merino. And that is, you know, from speaking to somebody close to the operations that are going on at Arsenal, is that no official offer had yet been made. And I reported that story on Saturday. Yesterday, my colleague Kai Kainak also reported a story surrounding the situation of Mikel Merino, and reported that, again, like me, as I've reported as well, that so far no specific bid has been made. No official offer has been made towards Mikel Merino. And that also he suggested that, you know, while the players' representatives have been contacted and that, you know, talks have been ongoing, this is kind of the stage at which the deal is at from the information that has been sourced in this. So, you know, an official offer being made, it has not happened at the time of writing those pieces over the weekend. And the story I noticed yesterday from Kaya was met with real, genuine backlash, and in some cases, backlash that went too far. And I think that what I've found is I found that in this whole space of, if you're reporting on stories, right? Now, people have different sources. People go to different people when they want to get information. Some people have more sources in the intermediary world or the agent world. Some people have sources within clubs that they go to get information. And, you know, I'm still very much young and, you know, burgeoning in this career of mine that I've only been doing for a few years. And information obviously is available from different places on this. And it's important to stress that just because somebody reports some information that they've heard and that somebody else has reported information that's slightly different, it doesn't mean that what has been reported by one person is categorically untrue, or secondly, it is not true to say that the other person is also not true. At the state of play, there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes in unofficial capacities. And that's really important to understand, is that talks will go on behind the scenes in unofficial means between the player and the club, between the two clubs, and clubs like Arsenal and Real Sociedad, who have exceptional relations together. They have really, really good relations to Arsenal and Sociedad. And so I imagine that any deal for Merino wouldn't be a case where, we've seen with Arsenal at times, with some clubs, that not necessarily because the relationships aren't good, but just because of the manner of the player and the profile and perhaps the interest from a number of teams, that what will happen is that Arsenal will go back and forth. They'll put in an official bid, that'll get knocked back. They'll go again with another bid, they might get knocked back, and then it might take a third, fourth, or even sometimes fifth or more bids to get the deal done. And for sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And other times what will happen is talks will go on behind the scenes unofficially. There'll be discussions about what the club is willing to accept. And once there's been a certain degree of conversation, the club will just put in the amount of money that it takes to get that deal done. And I think that this is probably a player and a profile where that scenario will be the one that happens. I think that this is one that when it happens will accelerate very quickly, that you'll see an official offer go in, and probably if it's not accepted the first time, maybe the second time, I'd be even surprised if it wasn't the first time, gets accepted. So I'm still confident this is a deal that will happen, despite the fact that what my information is at the moment over the weekend is that no official bid had yet been made. Kaya also reported that, there's been some conflict, if you like. I think conflict's a strong word, but, it's probably the most accurate term, that there is some doubts, maybe, that there are people in the hierarchy at Arsenal that maybe aren't necessarily convinced that Merino is the right type, and they have some questions about Merino being the right player. And those questions, I think, are fair to ask. He is of an older age profile. He isn't typically the type of age profile that Arsenal will go for, especially for a price tag of significance over £20 million. But Mikel Arteta, that's the other Mikel in this scenario, is very keen on the player, likes the player. And Mikel, of course, Arteta that is, holds a lot of weight when it comes to these types of transfers. That's what's really important. And I think the worst thing that I saw in responses to Kai's tweets was the accusations that it's done for clicks. That's the biggest frustration for me, because I know how hard it is to go out and get information as someone who's really just very new in this, to build up contacts. And Kai is also, he's been doing this longer than I have, but still in the grand scheme of, careers, he's still, compared to your far, your Ornsteins and your John Crosses, etc. We're still very young in this career, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of time to source information, to build up contacts that you trust and that are going to give you accurate information. And I know for sure that the information of where Kai has got his information from for this particular story is solid, very solid indeed. And to have people to turn around to say that Kai is just producing content, or that even I, with the story that I put out on Saturday, is doing it just to get attention, is incredibly disrespectful to start with, and it's very disappointing, because a lot of time and effort goes into reading a story, writing a story, to sourcing a story, and to getting that information out there. And there's frustrations that go on all the time. The story that I managed to break the story on Saturday that Smith Rowe had a 10% plus sell-on clause. I was the first person to report that story, and it was really good information that, of course, has since been cross-referenced by other journalists who have reported the same thing. And, it's sometimes you don't get the credit that you sometimes feel. A lot of effort goes into getting the information, producing those stories. And it's a real thankless task, is reporting on transfers. It's why I much prefer to talk about kind of club news than specific transfer news when I'm doing any reporting on things, because all that people want is the next story. It's not, fair play to you. You've gone out and you've got all this information, and, you've done a really good job with that. It's, what's the next one? Give me news on this guy. And you look underneath, like Fab's tweets, for instance, Fabrizio Romano's tweets. It's not, that's fantastic information, fair play. And you got to give credit to Fab, because, of course, his connections and contacts that enable him to so frequently bring out the first information on any stories in so many different aspects. But you look at the replies to the tweets, and it's just, what about this? What about this? What's the news of this? What's the news on this? It is ridiculous. And I had someone yesterday say to me, you going into the business have to accept that you're going to get that this is the reality. And I say, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I have to ask the question of why. Why? Why does it just have to be accepted? Why can't we challenge it? Why can't we ask for better treatment? Why can't we ask for people to be, more understanding? Why can't I have this conversation so frankly like I'm having with you now? I don't think we should be dissuaded from having these chats and these conversations about, the state of media, the state of journalism, etc. So, yeah, I thought yesterday was a really sad day, actually. And it was a frustration to see so many people attack Kaya's story and claim it as doing it because of for clickbait reasons. I mean, even the headline itself, there wasn't anything wrong with it. It was all true. That's what I've really struggled with it. I understand that, there are articles out there that are, the headlines, you raise a few eyebrows. I get it. But the caption on Twitter Kaya put was Mikel Merino interest is there, but not necessarily as simple as it seems. That's true. The interest is there. Arsenal are interested in the player, but it's not as simple as it seems because it's not a case of the club and everybody in the club are unanimously behind the deal. Because there are people that have asked questions about this transfer. There are questions being asked internally about whether or not he's the right midfielder to invest in this summer. So that was as accurate. The caption underneath it for the article was Arsenal's Mikel Merino doubt revealed as complex transfer takes fresh twist. And again, that's just a headline. People get very irritated at headlines. And I understand the reason as to why people get very irritated at headlines. I do. I get it, But at the end of the day, there is something to be said about a headline is like a book cover. If the headline gave everything away, you wouldn't read the book, would you? And a lot of time and effort goes into telling stories. A lot of time and effort goes into sourcing information. And a lot of time and effort goes into writing the hundreds of words that go into these things. And you don't want to give all of that away in a headline. So I think there's got to be a level of understanding about this. And again, I just thought the reaction was way over the top. Way over the top. And I thought it was important to bring that up. And as always, you're more than welcome to ask me questions on this and to leave your comments down below. And I will absolutely do my best to understand them to the best of my ability. But yes, Mikel Merino, I would be surprised if this deal doesn't happen. I think there's obviously very strong interest from Arsenal. Yes, there's internal doubts and questions going on, and I don't think it's progressed as maybe as far as some have perhaps suggested because we're still awaiting for that official offer from Arsenal, that first official offer to go in. We're still waiting for that. And I think that when this could happen this week, it could happen next week, it could happen later. But I think that this is a deal that still has a great chance of happening because I think Arsenal and the key figures at Arsenal, the keyest one being Arteta, is the biggest driver behind this one. And that there is a clear indication that he wants this player. And if I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was a betting man, I'd bet on Arteta being the guy that gets his way. So let's wait and see. I'm optimistic. By the way, it would be a fantastic signing, as I maintain. I really want this deal to happen. And I really, really, really hope that people recognise if and when this deal does happen, how good of a signing it is for Arsenal midfield. Because I remember I did a piece about this yesterday, actually, on Sunday, after Caio done his piece, about how at the start of the window, you and me had these back and forth discussions about this summer and about how this summer was always going to be about, the floor raisers. And it wasn't necessarily going to be about raising the ceiling. And raising the ceiling was going to be a challenge. Well, so far, we've brought in Calafiori, who I think a lot of us believe has the potential to start at left back. And we're bringing in potentially Mikel Merino, who I believe has the potential to start with Rice and Ødegaard over Thomas Partey, because Partey's form has not been the best at all. And so for that reason, I think that we've actually seen that Arsenal have managed to go into the market potentially twice, if this deal comes to pass, and bring in two players that improve the starting 11. So that's what's really key. And I think that's impressive. And I am impressed by that. So it's certainly good times, I think, to be an Arsenal fan during this window. And there's more excitement to come. And you should also be excited about the potential that a VPN service like Nord can bring to you and your devices, because it gives you that superpower of a geolocation changer to hob over to anywhere else in the world within the countries and the territories that Nord supports to change, of course, where your laptop or your tablet or your phone thinks that it is, so you can watch things that wouldn't typically be available in the country of origin or wherever you happen to be at that moment in time. It keeps you safe online, keeps those pesky trackers and things like that away from seeing your data. And if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you get a 30-day money back guarantee. So you can't really say too fairer than that. And you get a 1 or 2 year plan that gets a significant discount by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner. And if you get that 2 year plan, you also get 4 extra months on top of that 2 years for free. and up to 20 gigabytes of eSIM data too, which you can read more details about in the link down in today's video description. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle your questions and more. So if you've got some thoughts that you'd like to have an answer to, I will try as best I can to provide them to you. So without further ado, we're going to jump in. But I must remind you, please make sure, because I don't think I actually remember to do it in part 1. So if you haven't already, drop that like on the video. We try and get to 1K every single day on the channel. And with your help, we continue to be able to do that. So if you are able to, just press that thumbs up button. It helps us out so much more than you could ever imagine. So please do. Right. Let's go to, let's scroll up, I think, because I probably missed a lot of comments as well. Ambrose West says, raising the ceiling and the floor sounds uncomfortable. You never know. It's not bad walking into a room with high ceilings, is it, Ambrose? Not at all. Ty says, hi, Tom. I heard Arsenal were talking and agreeing things with the player and getting an idea of how much Real Sociedad wanted for Merino. And when he got back from holiday today, which is apparently, things would progress. And again, that could all be accurate. It could all be accurate. It's not what I've personally heard. I've not personally heard that at all. And that's, again, not to say that anyone who suggested that is not telling the truth. It's just to say that there are different sources of information out there. Certainly the source that I've spoken to just said that Arsenal have not made an official bid yet. A lot of the noise is louder than the actual reality of the situation at the moment. But certainly there's an interest. The interest is definitely there. The players, that the club, Arteta in particular, as to my understanding, really likes Mikel Merino. So I think that if there's a chance that things are going to accelerate, of course, him returning from holiday, as we've seen with Raya and Saka, etc., the players who reached the Euro final, now is the time where you'd expect this really to be able to accelerate. So yeah, someone said to me yesterday, it was like, well, let's wait and see if there's a here we go from Fab this week. It proves that those reports are wrong. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Because as we've talked about, things in the market change dramatically. That's why I love the transfer window, for how unpredictable it can be and for how chaotic it can be, and how Arsenal one day can be looking at one player and the next day they've completely switched and looked at somebody else and instead made an offer for someone no one expected. Like, I remember the day when Matt Ryan was announced without any prior reporting on the subject whatsoever. That was a really encouraging day to know that the business and transfers can be done without anyone making even a whisper, about certain transfers. So, it shows you the chaos that the window can bring at the same time, whilst also it being a really exceptional and exciting period of the year in the world of transfers. Martin says the problem is that the ceiling raisers are already at top clubs, and we are one of those top clubs. And bringing in players that can raise the ceiling of your club is difficult when you get to this level, and competing for titles. But Arsenal still are managing to do it, which is impressive. Mark says, where do you get internal information from? All due respect, I don't believe it. Mark, if you don't want to believe it, I can give you my best example of showing you where you can, where I believe the accuracy of sources I've got. So on Saturday, we all heard that Emile Smith-Rowe was being confirmed as a Fulham player. It's being reported, the sources, the information that, of course, was coming out about a £34 million deal, £27 million and 7 million add-ons. I'd heard this as well. And so what wasn't being reported was anything really specific about the details of the transfer. So I thought, I wonder if there's anything more to this story. So I go to a source of mine and I ask about, is there any sell-on clauses in this situation? And I get an answer back, to which I reported. So I reported that indeed there was a sell-on clause. And then I saw someone else put out a tweet suggesting that it was this amount, because there wasn't any, at that time, there wasn't any information about how specific the sell-on clause was. And so I was like, okay, I went back to my source and said, this is being suggested. And they were like, no, it's not quite accurate. it's actually more than 10%. So I was like, okay. So went out, reported the story, and managed to break the information that it is indeed 10 plus percent. Is a higher, the selling clause is higher than 10% in that Smith Rowe deal. And I just think that, Mark, these situations, that was then, of course, solidified and reported elsewhere after I broke that story. And I just think, Mark, that if that's not enough to convince people that, you know, this information comes from a very good place, I struggle to say much more. You know, I really, really do. So yeah. Ben says a lot of fans who are angry and disappointed with our moves this transfer market. If we get some signings over the line, I'm sure people will calm down. It's a 5 out of 10 window so far. Yeah, I wouldn't. It's tough to disagree with you, Ben. You know, at the moment in time, it probably is a 5 out of 10 window. You know, we brought in one player because Raya was already done, so we know that it's already going to happen. But 5 out of 10 window so far, I don't think he's too inaccurate. So yeah, and I expect certainly that's that number to go up with the business that Arsenal are going to do between now and the end of the market. Stu says, morning, Tom. I know we haven't done a lot of business for this summer, but City and Liverpool are making me uneasy with their lack of activity up until now. What are your thoughts? I think it's a reality of the market, to be honest, mate. The reality is that there just simply isn't those key top talents out there that clubs that are competing for the titles, you know, are looking at. There just isn't a forthcoming amount of top game-changing talent on the market. And that's what makes it even more impressive that Arsenal may still be able to add at least 2 players that improve their starting 11. And that in itself is a accomplishment if it manages to be completed during this window. Jakob says, just wanted to say thanks, Tom. Your daily Arsenal podcast is the highlight of my day and something I would find hard to live without. Keep up the amazing work, and thanks again, brother. Thank you, Jakob. I hope that things improve for you, that this isn't the highlight of your day. This should be the starting point. I hope it goes up from here, pal. But thank you so much for the kind words. Cross Jonky says, I hope this doesn't turn into a Yanam Villa, Gorkov, Draxler, Awar, and all the others type deal. I don't expect that to be the case, but never say never. KP says, do you prefer Merino or Fabian Ruiz in this Arsenal style where we try to control the ball? Of course, I think in terms of controlling the ball, Fabian is a better player than Merino. Fabian's a better passer. He's a more controlled player. But the thing is that Merino adds things in the attacking third and the defensive third. And for a box-to-box position, which is what our left 8 role is, Merino is the better option overall because he's the better all-rounder for that position compared to Fabian. Fabian, of course, showed some fantastic quality at the European Championship, but that was the peak of his powers. Like if you watch him for PSG, he's not produced the level that we saw for Spain for quite some time. He's not a regular starter for PSG at the moment either. And you might say, well, that makes him more available. And yeah, you'd be right to a degree. But I think that if you were looking for a player to replace Ødegaard, you'd move more so for Fabian. But because we're looking for more of a player that can be a box-to-box figure, Mikel Merino suits that position far, far more. Edwin says, do you think Gyökeres is a little disrespected because he played for Coventry? I think if Sporting had bought him from Leipzig or Sevilla, he'd be way more enthusiastic. I feel I've been relatively enthusiastic about Gyökeres. I think he's a gamble of a striker because we've only got a small sample size of some real top quality goal-scoring feats, you know, and that makes him a gamble, especially for £84 million. So, yeah, I think that for the money, there are people that aren't too convinced, and I think they've got a good argument as to the reason why. Not because of where he plays necessarily as being the key factor, but just because we haven't seen him produce it over a consistent amount of time to justify that amount of money being spent. You think about Rasmus Højlund, for example, you know, had a fantastic season at Atalanta, having played, you know, I think for a season in Italy after he moved from Sturm Graz, and he garnered a huge fee, and it didn't necessarily translate into loads of goals in the Premier League with Man United. So there's still talent and time there for Højlund, of course, to improve plenty. But Gyökeres is, of course, an older profile of player as well. He's 25, 26. So that is a big, big gamble for Arsenal to take on a player of that age bracket. If he was like 2021 and had produced the season that he produced for Sporting, then I think there would be far more confidence in supporters to say, yeah, we've got to go out and get one of the best young strikers in the world. Reality is He's in his mid-20s, not his early 20s. And so that does change the dynamic of how he would be viewed as a player. Amaral Guinness is Tom. One of the problems is outlets like AFTV put out that there are rumours and Arsenal are interested in 6 players a day, and people actually take that as gospel. Now, I don't watch it, so I can't really comment too much. I watch it when there's a need to. Maybe someone's asked me a question about something that's been said, and I'll go and check it out. But I can't comment because I don't know what it is. If it is a case where they're putting out a rumour and they're not sourcing the information, or if they're not crediting where that's come from, well, that's a problem. But if the show is saying Arsenal are linked to this player, it's reported by this, there's not too much wrong with that, to be fair. If anything, that's kind of what we do. So, I don't really see how it's an issue. I sometimes don't include some links because I am uncomfortable in using some of the sources. There are some outlets that we have just it's become second nature to go, yeah, you know exactly what I mean and who exactly I'm referencing. So I am quite picky with the stories that I choose to use, but yeah, I don't. Clive says thoughts on the João Pedro links. Don't get your hopes up, Clive. Is what my thoughts would be there. RRDM says the improvement in Palace, Villa, West Ham, and other teams will be a factor to determine who will win the league. City and Arsenal will not have as much wins as expected. This happens every year. We talk about how the Premier League in general is becoming more competitive and that the other teams in the league are becoming better. But Arsenal still have to challenge to win, and the aim should be to win every single game. And Arsenal are capable of winning every single game. We know that. Realistically, that's not going to happen. But we do know that there is a realism of aims to go and aim to win all of those games. Ben says they cite their sources on AFTV, so it's similar to this. Well, there you go. That's what I mean. If they're putting out a rumor and they've said where the source is, they're not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. And you're never going to be able to stop people from aggregating news. As long as the issue I have with aggregation is when a lot of time and effort goes into writing a story. Someone writes the article, puts the article out there because it's their job. They're paid to do that. They're paid to write stories. They're paid to source information. They're paid to bring engagement. That's part of the process. Without people reading the stories, there is no media. There is no journalism. You need people to read the stories to justify the existence of the media itself. Otherwise, there is no need. There is no, there is nothing. There's no substance without that. So the issue that I've got with aggregation is that what you'll see is say I write a story and I spend, a couple of hours writing and a 600, 700 word piece or whatever, and obviously spend more hours sourcing information for a story. And then I put that story out there with a link that I want you to go and read. I'm not going to tell you everything that's in the article by the tweet or by the headline because I want you to take the time to read the story that I've taken the time to write. And what you'll see is aggregators will just grab that story, copy and paste it, or put it into a tweet, put my Twitter handle and be like, Tom said this. And I'm like, great. Well, thanks for crediting me, but you've not linked the story. You've just copy and pasted everything that I've written and put it out in one tweet. And that's the issue. That's the problem. None of the stuff's behind a paywall. It's free to read. Doesn't cost you anything to read it. Doesn't cost you anything to copy and paste it. So that's the frustration, and that's the issue. But if someone's aggregating and kind of takes like a little bit of the story and says Tom's reported this, read the full story here with a link to the article, perfect. I haven't got an issue with that. I can't stop. You can't stop aggregation, and we do it here. We talk about other stories, and I'll say remember when I talk about like James Ollie's piece at ESPN, for instance, in the interview with Josh Kroenke, I tell you, I'm not going to give you the full piece. Here's a couple of quotes. Go over to the ESPN website and read James's full piece and go and read the full interview, because it's a fantastic article talking all about Josh Kroenke. So, I just think there's ways of doing it and other ways of not doing it. Tizer says, hi Tom, I have a worry about the lack of pace we have up front when Saka and Martinelli come off, and also the pace through the middle and a ball over the top if needed. Pace against City will be needed. And you're absolutely right, Tizer. And I think this is something that me and Clive as well have talked about before. We want speed in players. I want to make that very, don't isolate that quote. We want pace from our wingers, and we want to see Arsenal go out and add some real attacking talent that includes a lot of speed, which is why I like Neto a lot, because profile wise, I think he's perfect. But the obvious problem with Neto is, the injury side of it, which is an obvious concern, and too right as well. Mikey says, seems like in the absence of a significant signing, anxieties are rising. What's new? Of course, anxieties are rising. It's football fans, and it's the transfer window, and there's no patience in the world for transfers when it comes to Arsenal fans in the transfer window. So, of course, anxieties are rising. People like to make judgments before the window closes, which is a dangerous, and ultimately it doesn't really come back on anyone, really. You can put out something on Twitter behind an anonymous account with Bukayo Saka as your avatar picture and say pretty much whatever you like, because that's sadly the state of affairs that social media has brought. But yeah, I don't. There's no need for your anxieties to be going through the roof at this stage. That's for sure. Zanzman Rasta says, Tom, everything is a gamble. Even the most assuring target can be a very big disappointment. We can have an opinion, but it's important to acknowledge we do not have 100% certainty. Blissful Monday to you. Of course, every transfer has a risk associated with it. Declan Rice had a risk associated with his deal because there's a massive fee. But I am very confident in saying that some deals are riskier than others. And that if you sign somebody that's got a fantastic record in the Premier League, that the risk associated with a transfer of that player, be that Declan Rice, and a risk spending £84 million on Gyökeres, who's played one brilliant season in Portugal and one very decent season in the Championship, the risks are different. And I don't think that's unfair to point out. I don't think the risk is equal between those two potential signings. Ajmel says, is the expectation for the season to compete? We were 2 and 5 points behind City last 2 seasons with Merino coming in and all the additions. When will the expectations become winning a title? When we're no longer favourite. When we are the favourites, Ajmal. That's when we are expected to win. Next season, your favourite to win the league should rightfully be Manchester City, because there isn't an argument that puts Arsenal as the favourites for the league next season. They have got the best team, they've got the best manager, and they've got all the experience of winning it. They are the favourites, period. So the expectation for Arsenal being winning the title is when we are that team. When we win the league, and I hope it's a when rather than if, when we win the league and we become the best team in the country, the expectation changes, because you have then become, you've become that next in line to win it. Not next in line, the first in line to win it. So that's when the expectation is about winning the league. That's when the expectation is changed. But the aim, because as I always say, you have expectations here and you have aims here. They are two different things. Arsenal are expected to compete for the title next season, but the aim is to win it. That's the difference between the two. You can't be expected to win it if you aren't the favourite for it, because it just doesn't work that way, But also Arsenal are not expected to regress, and that's what's key. Ben says, like James from AFTV said, so if James said it, it's going to be pretty good, to be fair. We should at least sign someone in attack. We all know we need one. I don't want to hear about the perfect player wasn't available if we go trophyless once again. I think this team is good enough to win a trophy already before we even make a signing, before we even bring a signing in this team. So it's not a case of like, if Arsenal don't bring in an attacker this summer, and we don't win something, I won't necessarily be pointing to the fact that we didn't sign somebody as a reason, because I still think this team is capable of that. You don't finish 2 points behind City with the current team that we had last year, which also missed a £38 million injection of Jurriën Timber for 36 games, or 37 and a half, really. This team's good enough to win a title to me. I think we're good enough, and that's why that's why it's my aim to win the league. it wasn't in 22-23. My aim wasn't to win the title that season because I didn't think that we were capable of it. Now, Arsenal proved me wrong that season. Arsenal competed for the title that season. They went further than I ever thought they would go, and they went further than I think any of you really thought they would go that season as well. And yet it was still seen as a disappointment that they didn't win the league in the year, because naturally it's a disappointment, but also because expectations for some people changed throughout the campaign. They surprised me that year. The establishment of us as title challengers is great, and we're in a really good position. But we've built ourselves to this level, and the people that have built us to this level deserve massive credit for that. And people's expectations change, sure, but the reality is the expectation cannot be that you are, the favourites. So the expectation cannot be the league if indeed you aren't the favourites, because only the favourites can be expected to win it, and whoever's next will be obviously expected to challenge those teams. But that's just logic, Right. Pablo says, put some respect on Mikel Arteta's name and work. Mikel was voted the best manager last season. Acknowledge that. Obviously, I can't remember what the outlet was. It wasn't the Premier League. The Premier League didn't vote Arteta as the manager of the season, but there was an awards ceremony where he was awarded the award for being the best manager in either Europe or the Premier League. I can't remember what it was. There are obviously some people that believe it is, but you'd be hard pressed to convince many people that Pep's not the best manager in the league right now. I don't think there's much of an argument against Pep being the best manager in the league. I think it's pretty much a given at this stage that he is. Arteta's definitely in the top 4 managers in the league. I think Pep's the best manager in the league. I think Unai Emery is probably the next best manager in the league, because even though I was disappointed with what Unai Emery did at Arsenal, you can't take away his achievements as a manager overall. The Europa Leagues he's won, the job that he's doing with Aston Villa is excellent. So Arteta's still got a way to go before he's considered a better manager on paper than Unai Emery is. Do I think that he's doing a better job at Arsenal than Emery is at Villa? Yes, of course I do. But it's you have to respect the achievements of coaches previously as well. That's important to point out. Let's go to Walter. Says, Tom, why does it feel like Arsenal was slower than every other team with transfers? I don't know. Ask a Liverpool fan, Walter. Ask a Liverpool fan if they think Arsenal are faster than them in the market. They might think that we are, So, yeah, Walter, ask a Liverpool fan or a Man City fan who's been faster in terms of transfers during this window. I'd be interested what their answer is. Anyway, we're going to bring the show to a close there. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And I really do appreciate your time, as always, and your listenership. Even if you don't agree with me, I appreciate you turning up and tuning in and listening, is always important. And if you're able to have a respectful discussion about that, great. And I have to say, we talked a lot about Eddie Nketiah yesterday, and my goodness me, some of the comments from people that are so-called Arsenal fans, leaving things like some of the things people were saying about Eddie Nketiah in the comment section. I don't care if you don't rate the guy, but at least respect him, right? It staggers me how people are so frivolous with their insults towards people that they've A, never met, or B, would never say to their faces. So just bear that in mind. So there's a lot of cruelty in this world right now. Doesn't cost anything to be a bit kinder and a bit more respectful. And as I always say, please do stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and stay respectful, because it's scary right now, this world. So, but thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Do drop a like and subscribe before you go. We're closing in on 59,000 subs. So if you could subscribe and help us on our way there, that'd be great. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early once again at 8 a.m, tackling any of the news that has dropped in the last 24 hours. But enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I hope your week starts fantastically well. See you soon, and as always, up the Arsenal.